else, we all got to leave here.
Amen.
Prophets didn't live forever. So that meant that at some point in time, their life would be over. So it's what God asked them to do, they did. Why did they do it? Because they accepted the call. And yeah, oh yeah. And when we get into this, that's what this is saying right here. He said, "Well, thou not sure to put me to death." He said, in other words, what I just told you, I already know how you feel about me. You can go ahead and take me out. But thanks be to God, he put man, he gave man what he wanted, and he knew that they would deliver. Let's put it that way. There was not a time when they didn't, because we found one, the weeping prophet. You know, he was a little shaky from that, but he brought God's word and gave it to the people, even in his time of crying. But when I always say, you got to see self in the message first. Let's put it that way. And he understood why God was doing what God was doing. And it ain't no different from today. It was for a lack of obedience.
Amen.
We have a problem with being obedient. The thing we don't have a problem with is being rebellious. So we ain't got no problem with doing that. We'll rebel in a minute. But anyway, we're going to have a good time in this morning's lesson, because I know y'all ran to go. Y'all jumping into this. We got two outlines this morning. The first one is secret meeting, found in Jeremiah 38:14-16. Private prophecy found in Jeremiah 38:17-23. Conclusion of successful ministry, prayer, thought to remember, introduction, unheeding warning, lesson context. This morning's devotion reading will be coming out of what? Jeremiah 38:7-13 and 39:15-18, and we're on our way.
Now Abimelech the Ethiopian, one of the eunuchs who was in the king's house, heard that they had put Jeremiah in the dungeon. When the king was sitting at the gate of Benjamin, Abimelech went out of the king's house and spoke to the king, saying, "My lord, the king, these men have done evil in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet, whom they have cast into the dungeon, and he is likely to die from hunger in the place where he is. For there is no more bread in the city." Then the king commanded Abimelech the Ethiopian, saying, "Take from here 30 men with you, and lift Jeremiah the prophet out of the dungeon before he dies." So Abimelech took the men with him and went to the house of the king under the treasury, and took from their old clothes and old rags, and let them down by the rope unto the dungeon to Jeremiah. Then Abimelech the Ethiopian said to Jeremiah, "Put these old clothes and rags under your armpits, under the rope." And Jeremiah did so. So they pulled Jeremiah up with ropes and lifted him out of the dungeon. And Jeremiah remained in the court of the prison. 39:15. Meanwhile, the word of the Lord had come to Jeremiah while he was shut up in the courts of the prison, saying, "Go speak to Abimelech the Ethiopian, saying, Thus said the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will bring my word upon this city for adversity and not for good, and they shall be performed in the city before you. But I will deliver you in that day, said the Lord, and you shall not given unto the hands of the men of whom you are afraid. For I will surely deliver you, and you shall not fall by the sword. By your life shall be a prize to you, because you have put your trust in me, says the Lord."
In this, looking at this, and looking at it, Reverend Lawrence, and I said, would I still have raised my hand knowing all this was coming? You know what I'm talking about here? I say, well, Jeremiah didn't sidestep. And you know how we always say God got a ram in the bush? Who was the ram in the bush here? Abimelech. Abimelech, yeah. He was the one. But look at how God chose someone that, number one, ain't got no business talking to who? The king. Because he's a what? The eunuch slave. And I was looking at that. Now I don't want to, because I could spend the whole day with this. Because if we read chapters 37 and 38, we really got a whole picture of what's going on. Yeah, yeah. And me and Sister Gray was talking about this. For those of us who start to do some reading, when you start reading the Old Testament, and like Reverend Lewis just said, if you read Samuel, you read Chronicles, you read Kings, you read these prophets, you see all of this. I haven't read that before. Because what they were all a part of. And now what you're doing is you're getting their part. I looked at this. So it said Ebed-Melech, the Ethiopian, one of the eunuchs which was in the king's house, heard that they had put Jeremiah in the dungeon, and the king was sitting in the gate of Benjamin. Now, with that being said, he's in a position to where he can see everything coming and going. He can make decisions right here and right there. So here it is. I looked at it. That doesn't really mean that that's his name. The word Ebimelech, yeah, could be. It means servant of the king. Then it goes on to say, now we know Ethiopian, what that means. He was a black man. And he heard what had happened to Jeremiah. But as I was reading this, Jeremiah went to this thing 2 different times. But it was in 2 different places. The one I thought was bad when I read it. The man is in a bad place. But the second time, he was in even a worse place. So I kept looking at that thing and looking at it. And the Ethiopian, it's easier to say that than to say his name. Yeah. And the king said, okay, tell you what you do. Get your 30 men. Now I got confused in my study on this, because when I read it in the Message Bible, it said 3. I don't know if anybody read it in the Message Bible. But it said 3 men, but either way, 30. Because I looked 3 or 4 more different places and all of them said 30. So that could have been a misprint or whatever. So I'm looking at that. He goes and he brings him up out of where he was. Do anybody understand why that happened? Why did this Ethiopian go and supposedly give rescue to Jeremiah? Yeah, God is in all of it. God is all over this. You see, when God gives you an assignment and a few rough spots hit you in the road, God already smoothed them things out. Ain't no reason for you to even worry about it, because God said, I got this. I'm glad I serve a God that say, I got this. Amen. Because there's not one of us in here don't have an enemy that would like to see us taken out. Mm-hmm. That's why he said, pray for him. Yeah, because see, they plotting to take you out. And all the time, God already got that thing worked out. See, casting him into the, watch this. What happened to him when he come up out of the dungeon? Come on, y'all. We see it on the news. We see it on the news every day. We hear it coming out of the courtrooms every day. Huh?
I say he still trusted God.
Yeah, but what happened when he come up out of the? Was he free to go running around? That's what I'm asking. He had house arrest. That's what we call it today. Yeah. He had house arrest. Yeah, because they said you're still in prison, but you're now in the what? Yeah, the king's court. And there's somebody still watching over you. So I looked at this thing and I said, sometimes when we think we're in the worst of worst, we really better off. Yep. Yeah. You know, and I'm looking and I said, we never know how it is God is going to bless us and rescue us and deliver us. We just need to know he's going to do it.
Amen.
That's right.
Yeah, come on.
Sometimes we think that the state we're in, whether we are living in desolation, whether we live in high on the hog, we think that determines our relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus said a man's life does not consist of what he possesses. And here we see Jeremiah really had nothing.
No.
He had nothing. He didn't have a land of his own.
No.
He was between that.
Right.
But he had the word of God. If you look every time that said the word of the Lord came to me,
right.
saying. And we value that. But the most important aspect of our whole relationship with God is his word.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeremiah was one who didn't back down.
Right.
He'll tell you, you ask him, he gonna tell you. And you ain't gonna like this what this lesson about. They didn't like it.
No. And I want you to understand something. Ebed-Emelech had a fear of the Babylonians. And when you read this thing, there's two things going on. And that's what the prophet Jeremiah was telling them. He said, why don't you just go ahead and go on down into Babylon and go on be slave, because that's what God, And then he also told me, he said, well, if you don't want to do it down there, you have to give yourself up to that other bunch of people too. Either way, you got to give up, in other words. You ain't got a choice, really. And there it is, the Chaldees was coming after them. Well, first of all, the Egyptians were supposed to be their helpers.
There you go.
And he said, and they're going to leave you. Yeah, he said, they're going to leave you and go on back home. They ain't thinking about you. Even though they'll put it in your mind, they're going to help you. When time comes for help, you ever been, I remember as a kid growing up, you go out on the schoolyard and all of a sudden y'all doing your thing and you got all your boys behind you. And when you look behind you, your boys ain't behind you no more. Yeah. You there by yourself. Well, that's what this was. They were there by themselves. Because he took off and went on about his business. So anyway, I ain't gonna stay there too long because we got a whole lot of good stuff coming up just where we done got to in chapter 38. And I hope you read verses 1 through 13 in this chapter also. But anyway, it just the more you read, the gooder and gooder and gooder it is. If I can say it that way. Is that all right? All right. Yeah, that's what I say. You had to read all three. And it wasn't hard because they weren't long chapters, 20 verses, 20, whatever. It was just, but it was good read.
The thing I did a trace team, because we always said Israel was in their situation they was in because of their leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So I went all the way back to Josiah.
Mm-hmm.
And his son, Jehoram. They, he only lasted 3 months, but he was under Egyptian rule. Then he was replaced, and then the king, the Pharaoh of Egypt, replaced him with his Josiah's other son, Eliakim, who became Joab. And Joab's son, after Joachim died, Joachim, who was replaced, whose name, original name was Matthias. He was replaced by, his name was changed to Zedekiah. And that's where we are now.
Yeah.
With King Zedekiah.
Because I mentioned this a while back when we were studying. I said a lot of times when these names start popping up that you can't pronounce, check them out. Because there's a reason they're telling you about these people. You know, he's the son of this one, and it all ties in when you get to like what Reverend Lewis was saying. By the time you get to where you are, there's a reason in the word is telling you who these people are.
Wow.
So let's not hold us up because we want to get into the meat of it. Let's go ahead and do our, unless y'all want to hold up a little longer, let's go ahead and do the introduction.
Nico is a seismologist and university professor in Japan. For years warned that many of Japan's nuclear power plants were at risk for significant damage from earthquakes. Though he and his colleagues warned about possible catastrophe, they were largely ignored. When a magnitude 9.0 earthquake occurred off the northern coast of Japan's main inland in March 2011, the resulting tsunami caused massive damage to the nuclear power station in Fukushima. Ensuing radioactive fallout forced some 160,000 people to evacuate their homes across an area of approximately 300 square miles. Studies and reports since published indicate these cautions, warnings about possible disaster at the site. When the nation of Judah faced God's wrath for their many violations of the covenant with God, the Lord commissioned Jeremiah to sound the warnings and call them to repentance. Perhaps it was not too late for this faltering nation and their king to avert the disaster and desolation that awaited them.
I was looking at this, and just the other day they were talking about some problems at 3 Mile Island again. I said, we do stuff, and in doing it, all of the warnings that should come down with it don't come with it. We do a lot of stuff. I was looking at right now, they're talking about this gas shortage, and people are panic buying. Did you see the one where the guy with the Hummer and bought all of this good, and all of a sudden he had this big blast and the thing caught a fire? You see? Yeah, you do stuff, forgetting about, and you don't heed some of the warnings. One of the things, and I've been messing around saying, gas is very unstable if used improperly. Huh?
You know what's real quick? They on that crime about 278 gas. You were paying 349. $275. They said they were, it's just so high. We paying $349, $378 for gas. What's wrong with them over there? But the old people always say wanting something for themselves.
Well, I never will forget when it first hit. It was when it hit $1.99. How the complaints was. Now we're praying it to get back to $1.99.
Doc, you remember the gas shortage in the 70s?
Yeah.
People stealing people gas.
Oh, yeah. Right.
You remember that, right?
That was in 1979. My friend Jesse worked at a Circle K. He told me, he said, Ski. That's what he called me. He said, Ski. He said, don't worry about gas. Whatever you need gas, just come on over here. I got plenty. Because what they did was they shut their pumps off and they weren't pumping. So whatever was in the tanks was in the tank. Now, my brother who was, that's what he was. He's a fuel research engineer during those times. He said, we ain't got no gas shortage. He said, we just ain't pumping.
That's right.
I said, what? He said, we just ain't pumping. He said, we create the shortage. I said, what do you mean you create the shortage? He said, well, what we do is we put it in storage tanks. And we have a shelf date basically on what's in our storage tanks. So as long as the storage dates are good, we can hold up. But as soon as the storage dates get ready to expire, we release. So he said, yeah, there ain't no shortage. Yeah, he said, there ain't no shortages. Now, they create, like I said, you create them. You create the shortages. Yeah. But just tell them, all they gotta do is tell you, like they tell them now. And the guy says, you know what? He said, they're gonna do the same thing they did when we first got into this pandemic. This is a shortage, this is a shortage, this is a, everybody start panic buying.
How did I get COVID? I bought 300 rolls of toilet paper.
Yeah, you know, and all of a sudden you realize there really is no shortage. But anyway, what I'm trying to tell us is we sometimes get warnings that creates problems for us. We need to pay attention to what's being said and where it's coming from.
Right.
What happened in a few years back when they set their oil wells on fire? That itself created what? A shortage.
By the way, they said it's gonna be short on gas.
Yeah, you know. I talk to my sister almost every week. And, you know, a lot of offshore drilling is down around Galveston and on out into that. So what happened is when they start shutting those wells down, when the hurricanes and stuff and starts to come in, it ain't a show, they just ain't pumping. Because what happened is as soon as the storm blow over, they do what? They open them back up and and keep them over even longer hours. So they can get what they want, in other words. But anyway, we fall for it.
As long as we have an earth core, we'll never be out of gas.
Right.
The earth core produces gases in wars, crude oil. That's why they did oil. Come out the sky.
You know, like I said, my brother did fuel research. And well, I was talking to him. He said, you know, a lot of people don't understand. They're talking about building these electrical cars, this, that, the other. He said, what do you think they're using to power? Gas. You know, so in other words, and I know we're trying to get to the green and stuff, and then it's coming, but I'm just saying, you will never get away from that part of what we do. Let's put it that way. You can't, when this big freeze came through Texas, and I was on the phone with my sister, and she was saying, she said, well, the power is out. My brother told her, said, well, it really don't matter what you got. He said, why? He said, because without it, you can't turn your thermostat on. Right. So, you know, one needs the other. Your power is off. What do you do if you don't have a generator? And if you got a generator, where is that power coming from? It's gas power. So it all ties in is what I'm saying. Let me move on. Anybody else before we, get stuck there and can't get out? And then y'all have to give me some rags and a cord. So come down there and bring me up.
Well, see, in the 70s when they had that gas shortage, I was in the business.
Yeah, down there off of Western. Yeah.
And it wasn't a gas shortage.
No.
It was oil wells.
Right.
It wasn't no shortage.
No.
It was a man-made shortage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We knew what was going on. They wanted to jack the prices up.
Mm-hmm.
They jacked them up. I remember when we was in business, gas went from 30 something up to 49 cents a gallon. That was back in the 70s, 49 cents a gallon. And them people was raised and saying, man, especially with the air conditioning companies and all them different people, construction, they was raised and saying, you know. But to go up just maybe 5 or 6 cents.
Yeah.
But a lot of our shortages here is man-made. Oh, yeah. They do that in order to raise the price, in order to get higher sales from other people and something like that.
This is when daylight saving time came in.
Right, yeah, that's how it's about that then, yeah.
And
know-
what did it say?
Yeah.
Daylight saving time, ain't say-
Didn't say no sleep.
ain't saying nothing.
No, no.
You got a little more sleep, like
Yeah.
by an hour, that's all.
Mm. All right, let's see what the context is. It's kind of lengthy this morning, so I don't want us to get too far behind. Go ahead, context reader.
The prophet Jeremiah delivered God's message to the nation of Judah from 627 until the mid-580s BC. That was roughly a century after Isaiah. 5 kings reigned over Judah during Jeremiah's ministry. Josiah, the first of these 5, was righteous. For following him, however, were all wicked. These included Jehoiachin, who was removed from the throne, taken into captivity when the Babylonians invaded in 597 BC. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon replaced Jehoiachin with that man's uncle, Mattaniah, and Zedekiah in the process. Zedekiah wavered between servitude, the Babylonian king, and rebellion against that overlord. Zedekiah moved to his final decade as a nation before it fell in 586 BC. The destruction of Judea at the hand of Babylon that Isaiah had foreseen decades earlier drew near during Jeremiah's day. Like the northern kingdom of Israel before, Judah's unfaithfulness to the covenant had exhausted the Lord's reputation. Jeremiah proclaimed that the Lord would use the Babylonians as instruments of judgment against Judah. Throughout his prophetic ministry, Jeremiah warned Jerusalem in word and in deed of the coming destruction. He illustrated this message in symbolic actions. Yet rarely did anyone take this prophet seriously. His oracles were misunderstood and dismissed as the of a traitorous pro-Babylonian sympathizer. Jerusalem's more prophets proclaimed peace, safety, and deliverance. Their fabricated, uninspired message was believed among the populace. Twice in Judea's closing months, while Jerusalem was under siege, Jeremiah endured punishment for his message of doom. First, he was beaten and held in a dungeon cell for many days. Zedekiah, however, summoned him from the dungeon and released him into the courtyard of the guard. There, he continued to reveal the unpleasant things God told him. Zedekiah's official took exception to Jeremiah's preaching because his warnings would be treasonous and demoralizing. With Zedekiah unwilling to oppose them, the officials had Jeremiah put down into a muddy dungeon. But a high official named Ebed-Melech gathered 30 men to lift Jeremiah out of the mud and which began to consider him dead.
Just where you keep saying Judea is Judah. You were saying Judea is Judah.
I was talking
No, it's Judah. That's one of the tribes that didn't. Yeah, that's one of the.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, Judah, because it's important because that's one of the when you start talking about the northern and this, you have to make sure you're saying Judah because then Benjamin pops up, and when we get to the promised land, 2 tribes didn't go over. Only 10 crossed over Jordan. But anyway, here it is in this. It's just basically breaking it all the way down to where we get to who? Zedekiah. And it's amazing at how And like I was talking to Deacon Foster a minute ago, how this stuff is pointing to today. Right at the end here, one of the words that popped up during this last trick of what's going on, and he said they're being treasonous. Well, what is taking place is just because they didn't agree with how you want to do things, you're gonna say it's treason. It's okay for you to do it, but when I start doing it, it's treason. And I may not be around when it happens. When these covers come off, all this stuff gonna be laid right out in front of us. Because they are coming off. They are coming off. According to the word, if it's done in the dark, it will come to the light. That's God's word. That ain't me. I didn't write that. I ain't that smart. But we're looking at this, and it's showing Jeremiah's punishment. Do you see that you cannot take God's man of God and do him wrong and get away and do what you want and make it work?
Right.
It don't work.
You gotta be very careful.
Because what you're doing is, it's not the man that you're doing it against, you're doing it against God. All the man is doing is being a deliverer of the message.
That's right.
And what most people didn't understand was, if God don't do what God said, he says, I'm gonna protect you. Then he would die along with all the rest of them. But one of the things that I got in this, when he was telling about this war that was coming up, or this fight, or this, that, he said, now let me explain something to you. Because God is in charge. I want you to remember that. He said, even if you do think you won the battle, those that are beat up, wounded, and weak will still be able to put a match to the city and burn it down.
That's right.
That's what he did. I tell him that? He says, even though the weak will what? Put a match and burn it down. Why? Because God said it was going to take place. Well, if God said it's going to take place, just get ready for it. I started thinking about it. I looked back, I said, look at Sodom and Gomorrah. They talked to him. They started bartering with God. If would you do that? Would you allow this? Would you allow that? And God, I can't allow that.
We say.
But the ones that did walk out,
Yes, sir.
you see, that was because he let them go out. Didn't have to. But see, God always he always brings somebody forward so they can tell the story to those that are coming up. Each and every one of us sitting in here, I know, have sat around, listened to your grandparents, their grandparents, and the story is studied being told. Study being told. I never forget as a little kid, there was a story used to come on every year. They'd only show it just that one time, and I'd make sure I glued to it. The name of it was Green Pastures. I don't know if any of y'all remember that, but it was telling them the story about them, the Exodus, them coming out of Egypt. And I'd be glued right there. I wouldn't move. And then, that was one of the first times they had stuff on TV where they didn't have commercial breaks. They would go straight through. But anyway, we're looking at what's going on here this morning. And it says, but a high official named Ebed-Melech gathered 30 men to go and lift him out of where he was. Now, what made them think it's their job to punish God's prophet? Again, and I've been jumping up and down about this one, just because people don't agree with what you're saying. And one of the things Reverend Lewis that caught me this morning about this, it was about not the majority, but the minority. One man against how many? Go ahead.
I guess it can be very disconcerting when a person tells you the clear, unmitigated truth. There was no defense against what Jeremiah said. So their only recourse that they could have is to put him to death. That's the first thing you do.
Right.
Put him to death.
Right.
Did y'all see what happened this past week with Senator Cheney?
We were just talking about
Because
that.
he stood on the truth.
Right.
Right.
There's got to be something unconstitutional about what they just did.
I don't see, it's not legal. I mean,
It's not right. Good for like it's not legal, but it might be legal, but it's not right.
Right.
Because somebody stood up and said, this is a lie that was perpetuated by this person who they still holding their loyalties to. And he's not even in the office of no kind. And they voted her out just on that because it was considered an insult to them.
Yeah.
This man was an insult to their party, not this person. And everybody, regardless of the political choices or whatever, has a right to stand on what they believe on.
Yes. This country was built on that. Yeah, and it all, like I said, it's all gonna come to, it might not be in my life, but it will come to pass. It will come to pass.
It might not be in mine, but I'm playing with you, but tell them all that.
You know, because eventually, it's all got to come to the surface. It's gotta come to the surface. You
When
know,
people don't agree with what is right, then you are a person, a heretic, a person who's full of heresies and all this stuff. And you can substantiate everything, especially when it comes down to the word of God. That's one thing I won't do. I won't use the word of God to tell somebody what this. I use it for me. Clarify me, clean me, purify my heart, Lord. And hopefully I'll be a living example that will persuade and compel them to want to be in worship with the same God of my salvation. But too often, if you speak out in any form of sin, regardless of whatever manifestation it is, and because everybody is going that way, then all of a sudden you're a troublemaker.
yeah, if you pay close attention to what's taking place, President Bush got a lot he want to say, but he can't say what I won't say, but he won't say it based on what ahead. What's gonna happen is when you riding on the train and they ain't doing what they're supposed to, you know a wreck is coming, just get ready for brace for the wreck. Because it's coming. There's gonna be a train wreck. And then it's gonna be a lot of, like always, finger pointing. You know, but what happens is some of these think that they are in so much power will find out you don't have any power. All you had is your mouth, and when it gets silenced, that's the end of your power. You know.
And you just said the key thing. Go ahead.
And I sit back and look at this situation, and look at, the past and the future. We the people have, the bottom line, we the people have sat back and let things gotten out of control and not said anything. We the people, and especially the people that don't go out and vote. We the people sit back and go along with wrongdoing, not saying anything. Whereas we would seem like to me we was more together like maybe about 10 years ago and different stuff. But something, we just let Satan come in and just stir things up. And for a long time, but it was something you said maybe a couple of weeks ago. And for a long time, I had pointed the finger at Donald Trump. It's not so much of Donald Trump. It's that if you're not saying anything and going along with what he said, this is your thing. It's, you can't fault anyone. He didn't put the gun to your head. This is something that this is the way people felt, and I was really surprised because I've been sitting back, looking, at the change. It seemed like to me, the more I read the word and stuff, it's all beginning to make sense to me. And what's coming up is we the people.
Well, if you read this lesson, which I'm sure you did,
Yeah.
it said there was 5 kings. How many was righteous?
One.
One.
See? So we go through. So that meant that there was 4 kings that sat on the bench, and they were not for the people.
Right.
But when God is ready and God makes a move, then what? The people prosper. Yeah. It's all gonna come to light. Yes, sir.
When we brought up Josiah, you gotta remember how Egypt got involved.
Mhm.
Pharaoh and killed Josiah. And then Josiah's son, Jehoahaz, he succeeded Josiah. And for 3 months, as he was only king for 3 months, and the Pharaoh of Egypt came and took him away in chains and took him back to Egypt where he died. And made his brother Eliakim, who became Jehoiakim, made him king. After he died, his son Mattaniah.
What we have to understand, and then I look at this, I said, it don't matter who sits on the throne down here. God is always supreme on the throne. He's the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. So I get it, but then I say, you know what? I'm not going to allow this to define who I am based on what they're doing, because I know where it all will end. We all do, yeah. Like right now, they are afraid of certain things in history being taught because people's eyes are coming open based on history of the past. It's opening people's eyes. You tell me that you're supposed to be in control, but what did you do to get to where you're at? Whose toes did you step on? Who did you oppress to get where you are? And it's going to be just like what he said here. Egypt said, we with you, but when the fight got ready to come, what did they do? Went home and left them out there all by themselves. Let's get into the lesson. It's getting late, and we ain't even to outline 1 yet.
Then Jeremiah said to Jeremiah, I declare to you, look at not sure looking to them, and I give thee counsel. Zedekiah, so Zedekiah king for Jeremiah saying, I will not do you will I give you to me. See how I
Early on in the week, I was going through the internet news. This one guy that was part of the insurrection that took place at the Capitol, he said, I believe Trump more than Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah, you said, I read that, yeah. He said, I believe Trump more than Jesus.
Wow.
I knew then, I said, I know now how this is going to end.
Wow.
Yeah, that was his statement. Yeah, there ain't no God. When I read that, I said, now I know where all this is headed. But anyway, quickly. So Zedekiah the king swore secretly unto Jeremiah, saying, as the Lord liveth that made us the soul, I will not put thee to death, neither will I give thee into the hand of the man that seeketh life. Jeremiah already knew that, because God had already told him he was going to take care of him. So in other words, you can say it, but it was already set to come to pass. One of the things many of us don't know that goes on, there's a lot of secret meetings going on all the time. And a lot of things that are said in those meetings, we will never hear, but anyway, it goes on and on and on. When thanks be to technology, they're finding out a lot of this stuff was secretly recorded,
Yeah.
this, that, and the other, and it's all coming to pass. Well, I didn't say that. Well, let me see, push the button and then you hear what you said. Well, I didn't do that. Well, push the button and the video shows up. Look at how many arrests have been made just based on the video. I don't know what the outcome will be, but guess what? They got the video. They know who they are. And here it is. This happened way back in January. They just found Warren on that other day, and they just now arrested him. And he was right in the middle of a lot of it. So a lot of this stuff is going to come to pass. I'm not going to, go into all of that because that ain't where we're at this morning. But when we get over into chapter 39, when Zedekiah met his, well, they killed his sons right there in front of him. And then put his eyes out after. The last thing I want you to ever see is the death of your son. But anyway, that's an outline. Let's go into the private prophecy now, because what took place in the secret meeting, we know what took place. He told them what the Lord had said. Jeremiah told Zedekiah exactly what God had said, and he left it that way with him. So let's go into the private prophecy.
Results of obedience. Then said Jeremiah to Zedekiah, thus said the Lord, the God of hosts, the God of Israel, 17b, if thou wilt assuredly go forth unto the king of Babylon's presence, then thy soul shall live, and this city shall not be burned with fire, and thou shalt live in thy house. 18. But if thou wilt not go forth to the king of Babylon's presence, then shall this city be given into the hand of the Chaldeans, and they shall burn it with fire, and thou shalt not escape out of their hands. 19. And Zedekiah the king said unto Jeremiah, I'm afraid of the Jews that are falling to the Chaldeans. These they deliver me into their hands, and they mock me. 20. But Jeremiah said, they shall not deliver thee. Obey, I beseech thee, the voice of the Lord, which I spake unto thee. So it shall be well unto thee, and thy soul shall live. The consequences of rebellion. 21. But if thou refuse to go forth, this is the word that the Lord has showed me. 22. And behold, all the women that are left in the king of Judah's house shall be brought forth to the king of Babylon's presence, and those women shall say, thy friends have set thee on, and have prevailed against thee. Thy feet are sunk in the mire, and they are turned away back. 23. So they shall bring out all thy wives and thy children up to the Chaldeans, and thou shalt not escape out of their hand, but shall be taken by the hand of the king of Babylon, and thou shalt cause this city to be burned with fire.
This is one of those things where somebody comes to me and says, I got some good news and some bad news. Which one do you want first? I'm looking at this, and what's the good news? The good news is you're going to be held captive down in Babylon. What's the bad news? The bad, bad, but the good news is the other ones won't get to take you down. So this is that Between a rock and a hard, yeah. You ain't gonna win either way. You're losing to either the Chaldees or you're losing to the Babylonians. Which one do you want to lose to? That's your choice. That's your choice. Yeah, here's your choice. Where do you want to be held captive? Now the Chaldees is coming to take you out complete. Going down to Babylon, you just go down there and be slaves for what, 70 more years?
70 years.
Yeah. So which one do you want? Which one of these new, what the proportion do you want to live with?
Then you warned him too to let him know that if he did not turn himself in to him, give himself proof that he was going to suffer.
Right. Oh yeah.
You know, kind of like somebody knowing that they're gonna be put away. It just determine how long. You know,
Yeah. You know.
You want to take a plea, or you want to go all the way through the whole
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Line up in the electric chair. But oh, by the way, didn't you have in your Bible proper names in here? The proper names or whatever. If you put in the proper names in there, look it up, it'll give you the proper pronunciation of that name. Like Chaldean, CH, the CH is a K. Never, not Nebuchadnezzar, but Nebuchadnezzar is the K sound. If you look up in the proper, don't take my word for it. Look it up in the proper names, it'll give you a proper pronunciation.
Yeah. Usually, what I do during my study times is when I run across these words, I bring them up on the computer, and I look at them, and it breaks them down like what he was saying. Not only do that, do I also do the audio so I can hear them pronounce it.
Like Bible.
Yeah. And it gives me, when a certain word come up, I say, oh, I'm having a hard time with this. Let me go to, and I do that. You know, I sometimes have 4 or 5 things open in the browser at one time just to keep up with where I'm trying to go. So, but look at the picture being painted. He said, behold, all the women that are left in the king of Judah's house shall be brought forth to the king of Babylon's princes. And those women shall say, thy friends set thee on, and I have prevailed against thee. Thy feet are sunk in the mire, and they have turned away back. He's telling you, this is what's going to happen to your women and children. Now, a selfish person, very selfish person, will say, I don't care about nobody but me. But what he's doing is I'm painting you a picture of what's about to take place. How does this Picasso have to look before your eyes come open? What pain, what's torture, what do you want to go through? And like I was just saying, choose your pain, because it's both of them is painful.
It was not a pretty picture painted for the women and the children. How they could probably be mistreated, and you were at the mercy of someone else, especially the princes and stuff that was with King Zedekiah and different stuff. But now you're just out there, and it was not, how people have the advantage of you and different stuff, and how they may or might not mistreat the women and the children.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at Zedekiah, and he is king, but he had enough sense, whether he followed or not, to at least inquire of Jeremiah what was going to take place. He said, tell me in secret, tell me what's going to happen. Now he's giving him the word of God. Whether he accepted or not, I'm saying, at least you got it.
That's it.
At least you got it.
That's it.
Now, what you do, like for us, when you read this in God's word, it's what you do with it after you read.
That's right.
Because everybody don't believe the same. I'm constantly telling people, when you get into this word, when you start to find it, when you find you in there, stay with it, because it's gonna tell you how to survive, tell you how to do, tell you what to do, tell you when to do it. He didn't have to have take place what took place, but at what point do you give in? When do you decide you're gonna surrender? See, you can't get delivered until you surrender.
Surrender, there you go, Doc.
Yeah, you can't get delivered until you surrender. Now, how long do you want it to be the other way? How long? I think it's in one of the songs was talking to me, he says, "How long, oh Lord?" He was trying to say, because I know help is coming, but I just want to know how long. How long do I have to wait?
And also, may I read in the 17B, that very last paragraph? 17.
Go ahead, because we're getting ready to close.
Okay. Christians still experience God's discipline, tempered by his mercy, even though we don't always recognize it as such. This is part of the process of God's using all things for our good. This isn't to say we will enjoy all things, or that all things will seem good at some point. Instead, all things that happen to us and around us are meant to make us into the image of Jesus.
See, here it is, and we say this all the time. I learn from my mistakes. Do you?
You wouldn't do it again.
See what I'm saying? We say that, but here it is, because it said everything we run up against is supposed to send us to Jesus. Do you get there? When do you get there? How do you get there? Why do you get there? See, one of the things that when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's when you start doing something about your situation. I was telling the guy, I said, why do you keep running up to the top of them stairs? I know when you get there, a big foot gonna kick you and push you back down to the bottom. Then you're gonna get up, dust yourself off, and run back up there again. And down you go again. Then you're gonna dust yourself off and get back up and run back up there again. How many times you got to go up there before you get it? You know? But sooner or later, you get up and dust yourself out and say, no, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way.
They call that insanity. Keep doing the same thing over and
So
over
you
again.
get the same, expect to get a different result. It don't happen. Amen. Let's read our conclusion.
Successful ministry. What other ministry of doom would we hold in such high esteem as Jeremiah's? He was a failure by human standards, accused falsely instead of believed, persecuted by officials, betrayed by family. No one obeyed Jeremiah's word. Even after his predictions about Zedekiah and Jerusalem were fulfilled, Jeremiah continued to be disbelieved and dismissed. Yet from the standpoint of faith, the life of Jeremiah was successful by God's standards. The contrast between him and Zedekiah could hardly be starker. Zedekiah was one whose mind wavered moment by moment as he tried to save his own skin in his own way. He had no meaningful faith, no courage, no enduring principles. All the while, Jeremiah remained true to his calling, willing to deliver the word of God, even though he knew it would cost him dearly. He was open to God's leading, even through doubts, tears, and fears. Those are the marks of real success. Jeremiah is a book for today's times. Christians, too, can expect the world to ignore our message and ridicule our convictions. We can expect hostility to arise in areas where the gospel is proclaimed boldly. In some nations, this results in loss of relevancy and influence. In others, it results in torture, rape, or beheading. Though Christ is with us always, Christian discipleship carries no guarantee of personal comfort or applause. But like Jeremiah, we must learn to see the world as God sees it and remain true to our calling. We must continually pray that we will speak the truth boldly.
Oh, amen.
See, Zedekiah made a decision. I got the truth, but I'm gonna do it my way. And when we decide that, then you're gonna get the results of doing it your way. You can do it God's way, or you can do it your own way. Where do you think you're gonna have the most success? Yes, sir, Reverend.
And also, like in the 36th chapter of Second Chronicles, he said God had warned him before, because he had compassion on people, it still was gonna happen. But he still extended a warning to him again. Before it said be time, but that means before time. And let him know this is already happened now, 10 years. This is, you just kept saying over and over again, this is what's going to befall.
And you notice also in this, if you read it, I didn't get you, but when the warning went to Nineveh, God held off, but guess what? It still took place. So don't think you can bother with God and change, because he don't change. He may delay, but he won't change. Amen. Let's have our morning prayer.
Father, teach us what it means to be successful in your life.
Give us the strength to proclaim your message to the world only. Come what may. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thought to remember?
Proclaiming God's message is risky, but to ignore the message is fatal.
Let's do that again. Proclaiming God's message is risky, but to ignore the message is faith. Amen. Amen. We're gone. See you next week.